if you follow the stages of industrialization, you know, in Henry George's time in 1870, 75% of the people still lived on farms, right? Okay. Automation, or not, industrialization pushed almost everybody off the farms to only 3% of the people today are farmers. But the difference is the farms are still here. So, okay, let's assume you automated all the factories back in 1970 and had a lot less workers. You'd still had a lot more productivity and a lot more profits to spread around in other industries, higher and higher tech. So you could have just upgraded the kinds of technology and factories that you had.
There are new industries that crop up.
Well, in capitalism, as long as you've got energy, free energy, relatively speaking, and you have you have people who get fed from the basic industries, there's no end to the kinds of industries they create, but they all create industries with fewer and fewer people. It's true. So more and more people are going to have to be on the dole, one way or another. And also there's a tremendous push of resources into that kind of a system. This is a finite planet. No one talks about that. This planet is half gone already in terms of what it can support. I mean, half the measures of bioviability are already compromised. So right now we have to turn a lot of energy and business into fixing environmental issues, or there'll be nothing to talk about within 50 years here. So, but you're right about the factories. But we could have kept those factories and kept the wealth. It still would have employed everybody. You'd have to find new ways to do it. At the end of the day, you're going to find that 10% of the population can do all the work. And 90% of the population is going to have to be taken care of one way or another. Now, in a world of scarce resources, before we get to that, other countries and everybody will be killing each other. As part of being a padrone, you got to take care of your buddies.
Yep.
He's got a narrow set of buddies.
Yeah.
You know? He's got a narrow set of buddies. This is like, whoa. Like, I can imagine Goldman Sachs sitting there just saying, what the hell? What has hit us here? We had a world that we're trying to structure. We know the problems. We know the pressures. And Donald's come walking right in. I'm going to borrow all the money. I'm going to rechange this whole thing. He can only succeed incrementally. Now, I don't know if he's got the temperament to do that, okay? He, you know, if I were him, and let's say I knew the answers, I would put a tremendous amount of people to work planting trees, labor-intensive public works, where I get a lot of people, I borrow the money to do that, where it's not going to affect anything, we keep people working. I'd make an attempt at building a fake portion of the wall down in, you know, high-tech, searchlights, guns, all kind of, for 10 miles. You know, have a big, so that goes nowhere for 25 years, okay? And then he could quietly borrow and create new industries, but you have to do it on an incremental basis. He can't upend the trade relations without negotiating, look, he'd have to negotiate a slow change in path where everybody in on the game would have their say and can incrementally move to a new equilibrium. And while that's happening, the environmental problem is going to trump everything. But if I were Trump, given the limitations, I would operate and I would feed my voting bloc in the Midwest, because that's the source of my power. I mean, I could put 3 million of them to work for not a hell of a lot of money, you know, fixing levees, you know, all kinds of infrastructure, you know, private contractors, loans, to all that, without destabilizing worldwide relations. I would do that. I would go to the Wall Street guys and say, look, we're gonna have to cut back the amount of money you're taking out of the system because you're just gonna blow it up. So I try to, look, let's ease it, let's tax, you know, increase the carry interest tax from 15% to 30. You're still doing good, slow it down. So I'd incrementalize it if I were him to try to bring it to a soft landing, but it would take 10 or 15 years to do that. I don't think he has the patience and temperament to do that. I think he has to make a big splash. He's got a plan. He's got the Duncan plan, and he's going to run right into the establishment. He's going to say, look, here's why you can't do this, and And I'm betting he's being a negotiator and a practical man, that he'll eventually be brought under control so that he doesn't destabilize the world. No, I think, times always change in history. I mean, China's almost a co-equal partner. The Chinese elites and American elites are pretty much hand in glove here. So I see it more that the elites of the system have taken over. And it's not country specific, unless the United States does something stupid in their eyes to try to hog it all. The Trump-Duncan hog it all plan might destabilize that. But no, they're growing together. Just like Britain found a home as a cousin of the United States. It trails in our wake. Its elites to the City of London do very well. Property values in London are just as big here as they are in New York. 25% of all the wealth in England is made in London. I mean, it's even worse than here. So, no, I don't see that. It's the Reich argument. You know who Robert Reich is? Yeah. Okay. Reich had always assured everybody that when we engage in free trade and we put everyone out of business. Robert Reich was the Clinton Labor Secretary, and he's a gadabout now. He's become a big progressive, and he said, all you have to do is educate everybody, and they'll find their way to develop new and better industries as time goes on. Of course, he didn't specify how long that time is. Could be a lifetime, 2 lifetimes. But it was kind of a sop to education. So I think it's a kind of a same thing. The Duncan Plan calls for a massive borrowing under the QE mantle of creating fiat money essentially out of nothing, because you can't create inflation because there's so much unused capacity around the world. And we're the natural borrower of everybody because we put our work out, and therefore they have to maintain parity with exchange rates. They have to take the proceeds and lend it back to us. So we can build anything we want. If we start building the new industries, nanotech, biotech, solar, I mean putting billions into these things, you can create a massive amount of jobs, technologies, and the intelligence and the education would follow that. It wouldn't have to precede it. The United States became the leading power in the world in 1870 with less than an average high school education. You learn, if you go into a factory, it is the argument Donald actually made quite well, except late in the day, and I would second that. You can't imagine the amount of education you get if you're making things. If you're making things, you're working with physics, chemistry, technology, hands-on, learning it, product after product, all of that. That was America's forte for 100 years. It learned by doing. You could take an uneducated person, put him in a place where he could learn technology, so he gets educated that way, and Americans did. Today, you have to make it more formal. I mean, the steam engine was developed without formal education, just by intuition. But then they formalized it. Well, so I don't think education is a barrier. China developed all the people it needed to run a relatively modern economy in 20 years. The answer would be in normal times, they would not want that. But he's got a bandwagon effect, he's got a movement, he's got a lot of howling power. If he blocks that, or tries to block it, the Democrats are going to support that simply because it's a jobs bill. So he'll have a lot of support, I think, getting that through. I think the Republicans, the small government Republicans wouldn't like that, but I think they can be outvoted. There's a big consensus for Rockefeller Republicans, if anyone remembers the word, and Democrats to push on that. Well, that's relatively easy. The QE, quantitative easing, was a mechanism that you can use if there's no inflation. And there's no inflation in this country because you can import cheap labor products in any amount that you want, so there's no constraints. Inflation is caused by constraints in a closed economy. We're a very open economy, so that doesn't apply. And also, there's no gold backing on our currency. We can print as much money as we want. What we do is we printed $4 trillion, had the Treasury issue bills that we bought with that fake money. The Treasury paid the Federal Reserve back the returns on that, and the Federal Reserve gave the Treasury the money back. So they created money out of nothing, and as long as there's no inflation, it's like counterfeiting. As long as no one calls you, you can do it until you can't do it. He can't do it. If he walks away from the trade agreements, he'll create inflation. That's the thing. He can't. The problem is if he starts isolating and abrogating those agreements, he creates inflation, he creates interest rates, and he causes a big depression. He can't do that. That's why he can't bring business back. Let me answer that question in this way. If I were American industry and Trump needed a symbol right now, I'm going to give him. I'm going to be playing for time till I see what the real game is here. If I get picked on, I'm not going to be the guy that is going to make a move to Mexico until Donald Trump settles in. But if I'm dumb enough to do that and be a target, I'm going to fold, especially since Carrier is a division of United Technologies. United Technologies is also a company that's a bullying company. I've done business with those people, and they're smart. So American industry, if they're smart, will not do anything to aggravate this bull right now. If he cuts taxes, that'll be a heavy. It'll increase his deficits. He's got to borrow and print more money. If he jumpstarts his works program, infrastructure program, he's going to, and he makes it an all-American kind of a thing. You know, he doesn't want anyone else to share in the American kind of thing. That'll put bottlenecks in the economy very quickly, and that'll cause inflation, which will cause interest rates to rise. And if interest rates rise a couple of points, there's a tremendous amount of debt that will just default, and he'll collapse the whole thing on himself.